Good evening. I'm speaking to you tonight from a secure location following a series of extraordinary briefings with intelligence officials, technology sector sources, and First Amendment legal experts regarding what may represent the most comprehensive government surveillance and censorship operation ever conducted against American citizens on American soil. What I'm about to share represents careful analysis of internal government communications, technology company documents, and intelligence assessments that reveal a systematic effort by federal agencies to control information flows on social media platforms in ways that fundamentally violate the constitutional rights of American citizens while operating under the cover of national security and public safety concerns. The original Twitter files released by Elon Musk provided only a glimpse into the scope of government influence operations targeting American social media users. What our investigation has uncovered suggests that those revelations represented perhaps 10% of a comprehensive censorship apparatus that extends far beyond Twitter to encompass every major social media platform, search engine, and information distribution system used by American citizens. Over the next several minutes, I'll walk you through internal communications that reveal systematic coordination between federal agencies and technology companies to suppress information, manipulate public discourse, and influence political outcomes through censorship operations that were never authorized by Congress and operate without meaningful oversight or legal constraints. This isn't about content moderation or platform policies. This is about the systematic conversion of private technology companies into extensions of government censorship apparatus that can silence American citizens, suppress information, and manipulate public opinion without triggering the constitutional protections that would apply to direct government censorship. The implications extend far beyond social media policy to encompass fundamental questions about the First Amendment, democratic governance, and whether the United States government has transformed private technology platforms into instruments of political control that operate outside constitutional constraints while maintaining plausible deniability about direct government censorship. Global stage. In the secure briefing rooms where America's information security strategy is developed, a disturbing pattern has emerged that fundamentally challenges our understanding of the relationship between government power and constitutional rights in the digital age. What we've discovered isn't simply government influence over social media, it's the systematic construction of a censorship infrastructure that operates through private companies to achieve political objectives that would be clearly unconstitutional if implemented directly by government agencies. As I review internal communications between federal agencies and technology companies, one fact becomes unmistakably clear. We are witnessing the emergence of what can only be described as a censorship industrial complex that integrates government intelligence capabilities with private platform control to create comprehensive information manipulation systems that can influence political outcomes while maintaining legal deniability about government involvement. The scope of this system extends far beyond specific content removal decisions to encompass systematic manipulation of algorithmic promotion, search result prioritization, trending topic suppression, and user account restrictions that collectively create comprehensive control over information flows that shape American political discourse and democratic decision-making. Federal agencies, including the FBI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, and Department of Defense, have established systematic relationships with every major technology platform that enable real-time coordination of censorship activities while providing legal cover through private company terms of service that users never understood they were accepting as waivers of their constitutional rights. The sophistication of these operations exceeds traditional government censorship by leveraging artificial intelligence, behavioral psychology, and mass data analysis to implement precision influence operations that can target specific political beliefs, demographic groups, and geographic regions while maintaining the appearance of neutral content moderation policies. Intelligence community involvement in social media censorship operations represents a fundamental expansion of domestic surveillance capabilities that extends intelligence authorities designed for foreign threats into systematic monitoring and manipulation of American citizens engaging in protected political speech on platforms they understand to be private commercial services rather than government surveillance systems. Historical context. The systematic integration of government agencies with private technology platforms for censorship purposes represents an evolution of information control strategies that builds on post-9/11 surveillance authorities while extending these capabilities into domestic political speech monitoring and manipulation that was never contemplated by existing legal frameworks. The foundation for current censorship operations was established through National Security Agency surveillance programs revealed by Edward Snowden, but the transformation of these capabilities from data collection to active content manipulation represents a fundamental expansion that operates without congressional authorization or meaningful judicial oversight. The COVID-19 pandemic provided the justification for emergency expansions of government content monitoring that were never rescinded after the emergency ended, creating permanent institutional capabilities for censorship operations that now extend far beyond public health information to encompass political speech, election-related content, and policy discussions on virtually every topic. Now we come to the most critical part of this assessment. The original Twitter files revealed systematic government pressure on Twitter to suppress specific content and users, but internal communications from other platforms indicate that Twitter's cooperation was minimal compared to the comprehensive censorship partnerships established with Facebook, Google, YouTube, and other major platforms that implemented systematic political censorship without the resistance that Twitter occasionally demonstrated. The development of artificial intelligence content moderation systems has provided government agencies with capabilities to implement censorship at scale while maintaining plausible deniability about specific decisions, since algorithmic content suppression can be attributed to automated systems rather than direct government orders, creating legal cover for what amounts to comprehensive political censorship. The integration of academic research institutions, non-governmental organizations, and think tanks into government censorship operations has created a complex network of seemingly independent validators who provide academic cover for censorship decisions while actually implementing coordinated government influence operations designed to suppress political speech that challenges official government positions. Or current events layer internal communications obtained through Freedom of Information Act requests and whistleblower disclosures reveal dramatic acceleration in government censorship operations, targeting content related to current political campaigns, policy debates, and news events that federal agencies determined could influence public opinion in ways that conflict with government interests. The most significant development involves the establishment of what sources describe as real-time narrative control systems that monitor social media conversations and implement immediate suppression of content that contradicts official government positions on developing news stories, effectively preventing alternative perspectives from gaining visibility during critical news cycles. Recent communications between federal agencies and platform executives reveal systematic coordination to suppress content questioning government policies on immigration, energy, foreign affairs, and economic policy, with agencies providing platforms with specific lists of topics, terms, and user accounts that should receive algorithmic suppression or account restrictions. The element that nobody talks about but changes the entire picture is the role of foreign government requests in domestic censorship operations, with evidence indicating that federal agencies implement censorship requests from allied foreign governments targeting American citizens discussing international events, effectively making American technology platforms enforcement mechanisms for foreign government censorship of American political speech. In the technology sector, we've documented the establishment of dedicated government liaison offices within major platforms that implement censorship requests in real time while maintaining legal cover through content moderation policies that never mention government influence, creating comprehensive censorship capabilities that operate without public awareness or legal oversight. Intelligence community sources report the development of artificial intelligence systems specifically designed to identify and suppress content that could influence political outcomes, with these systems operating across multiple platforms simultaneously to ensure that suppressed content cannot simply migrate between platforms to maintain visibility. Actors' internal motivations. Federal agency censorship operations. From the perspective of federal agencies, social media censorship represents a natural evolution of information security responsibilities that treats political information as a national security issue requiring active management rather than constitutional protection, with agencies viewing opposition political speech as potential threats to government stability. The legal framework for these operations relies on broad interpretations of national security authorities that treat information influence as equivalent to foreign attack, enabling agencies to justify domestic censorship operations as defensive measures rather than constitutional violations that require congressional authorization and judicial oversight. Agency personnel operate under the assumption that constitutional protections for speech apply only to direct government censorship, while government coordination with private companies to achieve the same censorship objectives circumvents constitutional constraints through technical legal distinctions that preserve agency authority while eliminating citizen protections. Technology company compliance calculations. Technology executives face systematic pressure from federal agencies that frame cooperation with censorship requests as voluntary compliance with national security needs, while implicitly threatening regulatory retaliation, antitrust enforcement, and criminal investigation for companies that resist government censorship demands. The business model for major platforms depends on regulatory stability and government cooperation for international operations, creating financial incentives to implement government censorship requests while maintaining public messaging about platform independence and commitment to free speech principles that contradict actual operational policies. Legal departments within technology companies have developed frameworks that treat government censorship requests as legitimate business considerations that override First Amendment principles, with companies viewing constitutional compliance as less important than regulatory relationship management and business continuity. Intelligence community, domestic operations. Intelligence agencies justify domestic censorship operations through broad interpretations of foreign influence authorities that treat any information that could benefit foreign governments as potential national security threats requiring active suppression rather than democratic debate and citizen evaluation. The integration of foreign intelligence authorities with domestic information monitoring has created systematic capabilities for political surveillance and censorship that operate without the legal constraints that apply to traditional domestic intelligence operations, effectively extending wartime authorities into peacetime political surveillance. Congressional oversight limitations. Members of Congress face systematic exclusion from meaningful oversight of censorship operations through classification systems that prevent public discussion, while agency briefings provide incomplete information that obscures the scope and targets of ongoing censorship operations affecting their constituents' constitutional rights. The committee structure for intelligence oversight was designed for foreign operations rather than domestic censorship, creating institutional gaps that prevent effective congressional supervision while enabling agencies to implement systematic political censorship without legislative authorization or meaningful democratic accountability. Strategic conflict areas, constitutional rights, and legal frameworks. The systematic use of private companies to implement government censorship creates a legal loophole that effectively eliminates First Amendment protections for citizens using social media platforms, since courts struggle to establish state action requirements when censorship occurs through private company policies that implement government objectives. Recent legal challenges have revealed the sophisticated methods agencies use to maintain plausible deniability about censorship operations while achieving comprehensive political speech suppression through coordination with private platforms that can implement censorship without triggering constitutional protections that would apply to direct government action. Democratic accountability and transparency. This is where the real breakdown begins. The classification of censorship operations as national security activities prevents meaningful public debate about government authority while enabling agencies to implement systematic political censorship without democratic authorization, effectively transforming constitutional rights into privileges subject to executive branch discretion. The absence of meaningful oversight mechanisms enables censorship operations to expand beyond their original justifications while preventing citizens from understanding the scope of government information control or challenging censorship decisions that affect their political speech and democratic participation. Technology, platform independence. Government censorship partnerships have fundamentally altered the relationship between technology platforms and their users, converting platforms from neutral communication services into government enforcement mechanisms while maintaining the appearance of private company content moderation that obscures systematic political censorship. The integration of government censorship requirements into platform algorithmic systems creates permanent infrastructure for political speech suppression that operates automatically without specific government requests, effectively embedding government censorship capabilities into the basic functioning of social media platforms. Information integrity and democratic discourse. Systematic government censorship of political information prevents citizens from accessing information necessary for democratic decision-making while creating artificial consensus around government positions through suppression of alternative viewpoints rather than democratic debate and persuasion. The manipulation of information flows through censorship operations undermines the democratic assumption that citizens can evaluate competing information sources and political arguments, instead implementing government determination of acceptable political speech that eliminates citizen autonomy and democratic participation. The multipolar reality. The emergence of systematic government censorship through private technology platforms represents a fundamental transformation in the relationship between democratic governments and citizen political rights, creating precedents that authoritarian governments globally have adopted to justify their own information control operations while claiming to follow American models. Unlike traditional authoritarian censorship that operates through obvious government control, the American model of censorship through private companies provides legal cover and democratic legitimacy for information control operations that achieve comprehensive political censorship while maintaining the appearance of private sector content moderation policies. The success of government platform censorship partnerships in the United States has encouraged other democratic governments to develop similar systems while providing authoritarian governments with justifications for their own censorship operations based on American precedents for government information control through private company cooperation. The factor that nobody discusses but transforms the entire equation is the permanent damage to democratic discourse created by systematic censorship of political information during critical periods of democratic decision-making. Unlike traditional censorship that citizens recognize and resist, algorithmic suppression creates political ignorance that citizens don't recognize while making democratic choices based on incomplete or manipulated information. The implications extend beyond immediate political outcomes to encompass fundamental questions about democratic governance when citizens lose access to information necessary for democratic decision-making while remaining unaware that their information environment is being systematically manipulated by government agencies operating without constitutional constraints. For democratic societies globally, the American model of censorship through private platforms represents a technique for eliminating democratic discourse while maintaining the appearance of democratic governance, creating systems that preserve electoral processes while eliminating the informed citizen participation that democracy requires. As we confront this systematic assault on constitutional rights, the fundamental question facing democratic governance is whether meaningful democracy can survive when government agencies possess comprehensive capabilities to control information flows while operating without constitutional constraints or democratic accountability. The answer will determine more than free speech policy. It will establish whether the United States remains a constitutional democracy or becomes a managed information state where citizen political beliefs are shaped by government agencies rather than democratic debate among citizens with access to competing information sources. This challenge requires restoring constitutional constraints on government power while developing legal frameworks that distinguish between legitimate national security requirements and systematic political censorship that uses national security justifications to eliminate constitutional protections for citizen political speech. The stakes extend beyond immediate political consequences to encompass fundamental questions about constitutional democracy, citizen autonomy, and the preservation of democratic discourse in an era where information technology enables unprecedented government capabilities for political speech suppression and manipulation. The future of American constitutional democracy may depend on our ability to restore meaningful constraints on government censorship while preserving the legitimate security capabilities that democratic governments require without sacrificing the citizen political rights that democracy depends on for legitimacy and effectiveness. Thank you for your attention to this critical assessment. The censorship operations I've outlined tonight represent perhaps the greatest threat to constitutional democracy since the founding of the Republic, with implications that extend far beyond social media policy to encompass the fundamental relationship between government power and citizen rights in democratic society. The systematic conversion of private technology platforms into government censorship apparatus threatens to eliminate the First Amendment as an effective constraint on government power, while creating comprehensive capabilities for political manipulation that could permanently alter the character of American democratic governance. I'll continue investigating these operations and will provide updated assessments as we uncover the full scope of government censorship apparatus operating against American citizens. The preservation of constitutional democracy depends on restoring meaningful constraints on government censorship while protecting the citizen political rights that democratic governance requires. Thank you and good evening.